The sexual revolution of the 1960s and the success of feminism has led to generations of the most successful and yet unhappy and unfulfilled women that you could imagine. And there is now an entire generation of young women who are looking at their mothers and indeed looking at their grandmothers and asking themselves, is this really all there is to hope for? The fact is, the sexual revolution won. What started out as a subversive counterculture among dreadlocked hippies has since cut its hair, put on a suit and a tie, and taken over every aspect of our culture. The feminists won. And it has proved to be the worst thing that has happened to women in a very long time. And increasingly young women are recognizing that fact. Because, for reasons that I will explain in this video, feminism is a toxic belief system that condemns women to misery even as they become successful. I'd go so far as to say that you can be a feminist or you can be happy, but you can't be both. Because being a true feminist requires you to reject your own womanhood, and it requires you to go to war not only against men, but also against your own nature as a woman. Feminism is the dominant culture today in the West, so dominant that even criticizing it on video, especially as a man, guarantees that I'm going to get criticized by, well, obviously the feminists. But as I've touched on before, every culture breeds its own counterculture. And in the same way that the sexual revolution of the 1960s was a naturally occurring counterculture to the family-focused conservatism of the previous post-war years, the cultural revolution that we are witnessing right now, today, which was already underway but was just put on steroids by the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the subsequent rise of Erika Kirk to global prominence, this new cultural revolution is happening precisely because the failures from the sexual revolution of the 1960s and the failures of the feminism that followed can no longer be hidden. And younger women today are waking up to the fact that feminism, at least in its modern form, is a lie. My name's Toph. This is the Toph Project, and I help busy people like you to understand the world as it changes around us. I am 100% viewer supported, so if you appreciate me doing what I do, then please buy me a coffee via the button at tophfield.net. And if you like my videos, then you will love my books. There's Good People Break Bad Laws, all about government, power, human rights, and the need for us all to be willing to disobey government through civil disobedience when it becomes necessary. Then there's Good Christians Break Bad Laws, which is all about the theology of civil disobedience and how Christians should handle civil governments when they start to believe that they are God. You'll find both those books plus my DVDs, t-shirts, and hoodies at goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. Now, young women today face a very different choice to what their mothers and grandmothers faced, and they have a lot more information based upon which to make that choice. See, young women today don't experience feminism in the abstract as an idea, a promise of some utopia that has not yet come into reality. Young women today are growing up in a feminist society. They can see the outcomes, the fulfillment of those promises of feminism, and they don't like what they see. Feminism today is not the feminism of old. Today it has rejected its own icons, the truly aspirational and successful women that used to lead the movement. People like Martina Navratilova, one of the greatest tennis players to ever live. She was once a feminist icon, and now she is persona non grata, as the feminist revolution has begun to eat its own children. Likewise, J.K. Rowling, a hugely successful and influential author and former feminist icon, now they hate her with a passion because she didn't keep up as the fashionable causes changed. In their place of those icons, the new icons of feminism are deeply undesirable to young women. The likes of Clementine Ford. She's worked extremely hard to keep up with the changing definition of what makes a feminist today. And she is not better off for having done that. Need I mention Abby Chatfield, a perfect modern feminist icon, complete with the twerking, the tweaking, and the implied calls for violence, and a social media presence that screams misery and desperation, not happiness and empowerment. Young women 50 years ago wanted feminism because they hadn't seen it. Young women today are rejecting feminism because they have. They've seen what it's done to their own mothers and grandmothers. The divorces, the need for two incomes, the relentless balancing of family and work pressures, and the deep and desperate disconnection that so many women have today from themselves and from the people closest to them. I said that I would explain how feminism is a toxic belief system that condemns women to misery, even if they become successful. Well, here is that explanation. The reason why that happens is because feminism, at its core, denies its victims, that is, the feminists themselves, the possibility of any healthy relationships with men. Now, it's true that some women can get by being perfectly happy without needing or missing any sort of relationships with men, but they are the exception, not the rule. Keep in mind, I'm not talking exclusively about romantic relationships with men. I'm talking about any close relationships with men. Yes, husbands and fathers are on that list. Husbands and partners, excuse me. But so are fathers and sons and even male business partners and just men in your friendship group. If you are a feminist, you cannot, indeed you must not, have a healthy, constructive, mutually beneficial relationship with a man. It's forbidden. The reason is simple. Feminism promises women that they can have it all. You can have the career, business, family, and romantic life of your dreams. Everything all at once. You can have it all. Now, that's a fantasy, of course. The fact is that almost no one, male or female, ever actually has it all. And business and career success usually comes at the expense of your family and your romantic life, and vice versa. But the promise remains in feminism, you, young lady, can have it all. The problem with that is that disappointment can only be felt in the shadow of a failed expectation. By giving women wildly unrealistic expectations about life and how good their life is going to be, feminism is then condemning women to a future filled with disappointment. Because they have a bunch of unrealistic expectations that can never be met. But then comes the real trick, because their entire mantra of feminism is that everything bad that ever happens is the patriarchy at work. Is your life falling short of your wildly unrealistic expectations? Are your I can have everything lunatic fantasy dreams not coming true? Well, it must be a man's fault. It's the patriarchy. Which man's fault? Well, all of them, obviously, but especially the ones closest to you. Your father, your husband, your business partner, your boss. Feminism condemns women to a life of perpetual, misplaced disappointment. Disappointment because their unrealistic, wildest fantasies, which feminism placed into their heads, didn't come true. Disappointments for which they are taught to blame the men closest to them. It's toxic. It is a recipe for misery. And even women who do become successful in business or whatever, they are condemned to loneliness and misery because they've been taught to avoid the third and deepest level of human connection. In a new relationship, you have lots of dopamine. That's the first level of bonding, and dopamine feels great, but it's temporary because dopamine is directly tied to novelty. So as you start to do things multiple times, you're doing things together for the second, third, and fifth, and 100th time, you get used to each other and the dopamine declines. But that's okay because there's a second level of bonding, serotonin. Now that's your closeness and cuddling and deep and meaningful conversation drug. Serotonin feels great and it is sustainable indefinitely, unlike dopamine. But there is still a wrinkle here because stress causes your serotonin receptors to shut down. So all it takes is a health scare or a job loss or an economic downturn or even something good like a new baby that brings all this sleep deprivation. And all of a sudden your serotonin receptors shut down. And you think there's nothing there in your relationship. The dopamine is gone, the serotonin is gone, and you've got nothing left. What's supposed to be there when you've got nothing left in those moments is a third and deeper level of bonding. Now, this is the kind of bonding that comes with shared triumphs and shared trials. This bonding is not unique to romantic relationships. This is universal. It's the bonding that forms between soldiers that share the trenches, between footy players that chase championships, between couples who face the world together rather than apart. This is a level of bonding that transcends shallow chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. And having a history of shared trials and shared triumphs will cause people to continue to love each other at a level far deeper than mere romance, and will inspire people to be there for each other, even in those moments where they hate each other's guts. But it's this shared triumph and shared trials that is impossible between a feminist woman and a man. Because for feminists, you've been taught that you never work with a man on something, only ever against them. They are always and everywhere the enemy, the oppressor, a hurdle to be overcome and a trial to be conquered. So even when a feminist triumphs, internally she does it despite the men in her life, not thanks to them and with their support. And when a feminist fails, well, she fails because of the men in her life, not fighting valiantly alongside with them, and not in spite of their best efforts alongside her to support her. No. She fails because of them. And because feminism has filled her head with all manner of delusions about how incredible her life could be, should be, deserves to be, then you'd better believe she can find a lot of things to blame men for. She has a whole catalogue inside her head of evidence of all of the ways in which the men in her life have let her down or even held her down. And even if that feminist succeeds in life, in business, in whatever it is that she pursues, it will never be a shared triumph. It will never be a we moment with her husband or her business partner or whomever. No, it's an I moment. And so, thanks to feminism, that deepest level of bonding, the love that comes through shared trials and shared triumphs, that is denied entirely from feminists. Feminism has taken that away. And that's why people like Clementine Ford and Abby Chatfield are who they are. And that's why young women today are looking around and thinking, please tell me there's something better out there. And right on cue, splashed across the global media, comes something better, a shining example of what real empowered womanhood can look like. Erika Kirk. Now sure, she's famous because her famous husband was just assassinated. But she was hugely successful prior to ever getting married, with multiple degrees including a doctorate. She owns an apparel company that she founded and is highly profitable and does great charity work as well. Plus she has another not-for-profit charity. And she's had a successful modelling career, all of that under her belt before she became Mrs. Kirk. And she continued to be successful in business and in social and charity work even as she got married and as she became a mum. And if feminism was actually about empowering women, then Erika Kirk would be celebrated as an icon. Because, well, she's the closest you're ever likely to see to a woman who truly had it all. Had. Because thanks to a bullet, she no longer has it all. But even in her deepest and most outrageous loss, Erika Kirk remains a picture of grace, of feminine strength, of the kind of womanhood that feminists fear. And for the young women who are right now deciding whether they follow the prevailing culture down a pathway to feminist misery, like Clementine Ford and like Abby Chatfield, and like so many of the older women that they see in their own lives around them, or do they go the other way and join the modern-day cultural revolution, the rebellion, the counterculture that is rising among the youth, and they reclaim their womanhood, reject victimhood, and live a life with shared triumphs and shared trials with those closest to them, including the men in their lives? They are making that choice. And the contrast between those two paths could not be clearer. And thanks to the tragedy of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the contrast now could not be more public. Every revolution eats its own children, and the children of the feminist revolution are being eaten alive as we speak. But also every culture breeds its own counterculture, and we are living in the middle of a new cultural revolution. Young people today, both male and female, are rejecting the fruit of the 60-year-old sexual revolution. They are rejecting much of what they see and hear from their parents and even from their grandparents, and they are reaching further back in time, looking for something more solid, more substantial, whatever it was that used to work before the feminists broke it. Is it really any surprise that so many young people are right now finding faith in God? That so many young people are rejecting our culture of misery and loneliness and death and embracing the design that God has for their life? Feminism first said that women can be like men. Then it said that women can be better than men. Now it says that men can be women. And feminism has forgotten the answer to the question, what is a woman? But Erika Kirk can answer that question. She has answered that question. And from now on, when a young woman asks you, what is a woman? Who am I? What can I be? I think the best thing you could do for her and for her future happiness is to point at Erika Kirk and other amazing women like her. There's plenty around. Women who embrace the fullness of their womanhood, their motherhood, their wifehood, who reject feminist lies and embrace shared triumphs and shared trials with the good and decent men in their lives. Women who reject the lie that men are the cause of their problems in this world and instead embrace their husbands and wholeheartedly declare that it is us against the world. Find those examples, those women. If you can be such an example, then be one. And when a young woman says to you, what am I? Who am I? What is a woman? And what could I become? Point to those examples like Erika Kirk and say, there, look there. That's what a woman is. We are in the middle of the greatest cultural revolution since the 1960s, and feminists are fast becoming the new generation of bitter clingers, being left behind as the world moves on without them. If you have a young woman in your family or in your life who you think would benefit from this video, please share it with them for the sake of their own future and happiness. My name's Toph Proj. This is the Toph Project, and I help busy people like you to make sense of the nonsense that surrounds us and to keep up with the world as it changes around us. I am 100% viewer supported. So if you see value in what I do, then please buy me a coffee via the button at tophfield.net. And if you like my videos, then you will love my books, DVDs, and merch, which is all available, at goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. Thank you for watching to the end. The algorithm loves you, and so do I. Please like, comment, subscribe, and as always, think free.